Hello and welcome to episode 218 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans' weekly podcast of many topics. I'm Mike Sollosi, and ladies and gentlemen and identifiers to a gender non-binary, we're at the last episode of 2019. Thank you for
the enthusiasm.
Yes, thanks for the response.
But evil has been defeated.
Only to rise again.
Are we recording from a cabin in the woods? Huh, weird.
I can neither confirm nor deny, but I'm starting to get real suspicious of those trees outside, so...
Oh, weird. Is that a merman outside my house? Okay, but I'm joined by 4 Retro Encounter regulars from over the year, and we have a lot of 2019 to discuss, so let's get into it first with introductions. Today I'm joined by Peter Triezenberg.
Hi, everybody.
Alongside Nathan Lee.
Hey guys, what's up?
And Joe Padilla.
Howdy.
And Alana Hagues.
Hello.
Folks, we've played a lot of games in 2019, and overall I think it was a pretty strong year. Like, I think I maybe liked 2018 a little better, because I didn't adore anything this year as much as I did Dragon Quest XI or Monster Hunter World, but that's very personal to me. Starting with you, Alana, what are your general impressions of how the year in video games was?
Too much. Every month it felt like, for the longest time, especially the last 4 months, I think there's been like 3 or 4 games every month that I've at least been half interested in. It's been packed, and it doesn't look like it's letting up anytime soon, but I would agree. I'd say it's not as big a hitter as last year, because like you say, Dragon Quest, Square had their new IP for Octopath Traveler, there were a couple of really good indie games last year, and there were a few this year as well. But I think in general, like, this year has just been consistent, more consistent than 2018, whereas 2018 had a real couple of big hitters, and that was me kind of sorted for the year.
Yeah, I think I basically agree. Like, 2019 was consistently good. Sometimes it felt really dense. And Alana, I mean, you're speaking from the position of our reviews head, so you're very keenly aware of how many games came out each month, because you had reviews to write and to assign. But speaking of which, Nathan, you're also on the reviews team. Did 2019 seem strong, weak, normal to you in terms of RPG releases?
2019 for me was like I feel like there's, like Alana said, there's something like every month, or 2 or maybe 3 games every month that I felt like I had some kind of interest in. This entire year has just felt like I've just had nonstop things that I've been interested in playing. But as I look at our list that we're talking about today, I clearly haven't played enough of the big hitters. I think I'm taking too many niche projects today.
Yeah, that's true for me as well. I played a lot of video games this year, but I definitely didn't cover 2019 enough to be able to handle a podcast like this on my own. But between the 5 of us, I think we've played a lot. And we have a list to use as guidelines. Peter, let's have you open up discussion. What's one game that we think we should definitely talk about before the episode runs out? I'm maybe from the first 2 months of the year, huh?
Well, you're gonna hate me for this, but Kingdom Hearts 3 finally came out.
Maybe I was opening the door for you, but yeah, it did. It was maybe the first big RPG of the year. Came out in late January, and it was probably one of the most anticipated games from a lot of our audience, because I mean, Square Enix and RPG fans are a Venn diagram with a nice juicy center. We had a whole spoiler cast about this. You've been thinking about Kingdom Hearts for your entire life, but maybe especially the past year. What do you think Kingdom Hearts did to versus its own hype? Like, how good was it in a vacuum, and how good was it versus expectations?
I think it's one of those things where, like, and I said this much in elsewhere. I think it's kind of falls victim to expectations in a lot of ways when you're waiting for one of these games for so long, and it's just got all this hype behind it. Reality is always going to kind of like, you have to kind of check that at the gate, because at the end of the day, it's still going to be just a product. Like, at the end of the day, it's not going to live up to everybody's wildest dreams. But I still think Kingdom Hearts 3 was a really good game. I don't think it's the best game in the series. It did a lot of things that were exciting. The combat system is really fun. It's beautiful, like visually wise. Like Square Enix has been switching to Unreal 4 instead of using their proprietary engines, and I think it's a really good call because they've made some really. This game looks great. FF7 remake coming out is going to be on the same engine, and that looks great. It's fun getting a conclusion to this like story that's been almost 2 decades in the telling. Even though it's like at this point, it's like we're trying to wrap up as many plot threads as we can as quickly as possible. Let's go. But if you're into that, and like I am, then it's satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, as a presentation and as a spectacle, it looked pretty awesome. But and you could like feel the excitement and the relief among the fan base that it was finally coming out, and it was at least exciting to behold. But sort of after the hype died down a little bit, I think the receptions were a little mixed. People were disappointed that some characters were underrepresented or had a lower role. Yeah, there's specific issues people had, but overall, I think that it actually released in a complete state that wasn't a total trash can fire.
This is no Final Fantasy 15, and I love 15, right. But this game, Kingdom Hearts 3 is a finished game. It may not have everything like that people thought could have been in there, but
it has at least $30 worth of DLC coming soon, right?
Yep, it's doing its little final mix thing, and next year, and it sounds like they're adding a whole bunch because the base game's getting some updates for free. Then they're adding like a whole bunch of secret bosses, like I think at least 13.
Oh, so you think that this is going to be the replacement for what they did as final mixes for 1 and 2?
Yep, basically, because they're adding new story content. They're adding a whole epilogue chapter that is going to fill in some of the blanks during the ending. They're basically making every character is getting their own little playable bit because we've seen in the trailer playable Ventus, playable Kyrie.
How many years has it been? Like 20 years? 20? Nearly?
Finally gets to do something.
She deserves it as well. Like
if this comes out in 2020, then it'll have been 18 years, I guess.
That's
I mean, it'll be about. I think the DLC comes out about exactly a year after the base game did.
Oh, okay. So that's pretty soon. That's sooner than I thought. Forgive me for not paying attention to the specific release dates of Kingdom Hearts content.
Because when the trailer came out, I sent her like 10 texts, like, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god."
All right, so Joe, I don't know if you played much Kingdom Hearts, but what's one 2019 thing that you enjoyed that we need to discuss?
I didn't play much of Kingdom Hearts 3, but as we talked about off air, I'm just working my way through it. Hopefully, so I can finish it up before finish up the rest of the games before the DLC comes out. Mm-hmm. In terms of 2019 stuff, I probably at this point have famously played not a whole lot from 2019. I think the one that I've thought about the most in terms of just its mechanics and the news surrounding it and everything would be Pokemon Sword and Shield, which we've kind of already talked about quite a bit on this and on Random as well. But it's a new frontier for Pokemon, and it feels more like a small step and kind of a not terribly confident entry into being on a somewhat home console. In terms of the models and how the gameplay actually functions, I think it's pretty great in that respect.
Pokemon Sword and Shield reminded me of Pokemon X and Y, because you can tell it was not as feature-rich as the games immediately preceding it. And X and Y, which is maybe my least favorite Pokemon generation, was not hamstrung exactly, but maybe didn't have as much ambition as the generation immediately before it. In part because it was on new hardware, and that limited some of what they could do. But they also introduced this, or I should say, Sword and Shield introduced the Gigantamax function, which sort of replaces Mega Evolutions from Gen 6 or Z moves from Gen 7, and also presents a basic ideas around navigating the world with the visual presentation that's really unlike anything Pokemon's ever done before. So Sword and Shield did a lot of very important presentational and experiential parts of Pokemon. They really made you sort of feel like a superstar, rising up through the ranks of the stadium system. And I think the NPCs they did introduce became more important to the whole world rather than just being stuck in their town kind of deal. It felt like a very complete Pokemon cast, but as much as I would love to not talk about the Pokedex controversy, it is a little disappointing that there's only 400 Pokemon in the game, and it is a little, and there isn't a lot to the end game. Once you beat the post game quests, really there's just Pokemon collecting and Pokemon raiding to do, which again it doesn't, and tower battling to do, which doesn't feel quite as rich as the end games of previous generations. But I still had a lot of fun with it, and just some of the moments in Sword and Shield, like before you choose your starter, you see the three of them playing together in a backyard for a few seconds. That had more personality and more joy in like a scene in a Pokemon cutscene than any other previous generation ever. So I want more Pokemon games like Sword and Shield, but I want a level of extended features and post game like previous Pokemon games. So I think they'll get there, but it's Pokemon Sword and Shield was an awesome first step, but they have not really finished the Gen 8 yet, and I'm excited for that. But on its own, I don't think it was one of my favorite games of the year. I played the hell out of it and liked it, but I'm not going to do a write up of it for example.
It reminds me a lot of X and Y in that respect, like where it's making a jump to hardware. It's got some minor technical foibles that don't ruin the experience, but are definitely present. And the content included is kind of bare bones. Like there is a post-game quest, but it's like really short and also really kind of dumb.
Yeah.
Oh god, yeah. The worst NPCs in the game.
I do not love those two jerks. Not at all. Mm-mm.
I really wish they'd done something more with the main villain, it's not really, Pokemon games aren't known for this story. Sword and Shield are particularly weak, I think, especially after like Sun and Moon and Black and White and Black White 2 also tried to push it a little bit. But like the villain pops out of nowhere. Like I expected it because, capitalism and things like that. But I just think that was the chance to do something, and somewhere deep down, I would expect and hope that Game Freak might be looking at DLC, maybe, for, I don't know, story content or endgame or whatever. Even the Pokedex, potentially. I don't really mind.
I think they've data mined some DLC.
Yeah, I think so. There's definitely some new raids coming up eventually, like the Snorlax raid is currently ongoing, so you can get Gigantamax Snorlax until mid-January, I want to say.
That thing is really hard, I'm just going to say.
Peter, we should try and knock that out together, because I haven't done it yet either.
Okay, no, definitely, I'm down. Like,
okay.
I think multiplayer raids are really fun. Like,
yeah.
It is a fun
they are.
series. The Dynamaxing, Gigantamaxing system, I don't dislike it, but it feels like a combination of Megas and Z moves, in that, like, okay, you can only, it's a transformation that powers up your character's attacks, but it's only good for 3 turns.
Yeah, and I think it dominates the game so much that I think I like both Megas and Z moves better. I almost wish they had just added more Mega Evolutions and Z moves than doing this.
No, I agree, and I really hope that this doesn't become a trend, that they introduce like a new. This is to bring this into my wheelhouse for a second. It's like how every new Yu-Gi-Oh series introduces a brand new card type, and then the game just gets more and more complicated, and it's like, you could just refine what you have instead of just constantly feature creeping it, And
I don't think that Pokemon needs to have a dominating new mechanic every generation to sell games, because it's freaking Pokemon. It's going to be the best selling RPG of the year anyway.
And fans spawning new megas pretty much since Gen 6.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not like they ditched Alolan forms, because there are Galarian forms, so they can indeed implement new ideas and keep them consistent amongst generations. But,
I think adding Galarian forms was actually awesome. And continuing that idea from the Gen 7 Alola games was good. But if they had just made this Gigantamax Snorlax that has like a whole neighborhood on its stomach, if they made that Mega Snorlax, people would have lost their mind and been incredibly excited.
A tiny little flea circus or something. That would
right?
Be great.
Well, or just having a whole village of Munchlaxes living on his stomach for a special attack.
That'd be adorable.
Yeah, but again, Sword and Shield has some limitations. And some of the new changes I didn't always jive with, but just the Pokemon fantasy of fighting in giant stadiums and walking around and seeing Pokemon sort of living their lives all around you, and let's be real, the starters in this gen are great. A lot, you can tell a lot of thought went into them, and they have a lot of really cool ideas and personality in all their evolutionary stages. We probably have 3 different favorites in this group of 5.
I love them.
They're really good.
I really like all 3 of them. Yeah.
I actually really like this generation of designs in general. I think it's one of the strongest, maybe since Gen 4.
The monsters themselves are not the problem with this game. There's maybe Joe and I disagree, but I think that the starters and a lot of the mid-game Pokemon and a lot of the end-game Pokemon just have really, really cool ideas and designs behind them. I mean, Alana, Dragapult.
Oh god!
Dragapult.
Every time I love Dragapult so much.
I adore the Applin line, like
yes.
Oh yeah, the
little apple dragon and a little apple pie dinosaur.
They took the visual of a worm going through an apple, and then they turned that into apple pie dragons.
Yeah, apple pie dragon, or like he either becomes the apple or defeats the apple. It's like.
And a little electric slug that evolves into an electric guitar or an electric bass Pokemon with
Toxtricity is incredible.
Yeah, with 6 strings for the guitar version and 4 strings for the bass versions, based on the number of stripes on its chest. It's brilliant. There's so much thought and cool ideas in the new Pokemon themselves, but it's just the stuff surrounding Sword and Shield that make it sort of not necessarily like if they had just really nailed every key feature, this would be the best Pokemon game ever. But they only nailed a couple of the key features, and the community is very, very uneven levels of excited and disappointed with it.
I do personally like a lot of the designs, but it's this game that feels kind of sterile in a lot of ways. And then when it tries to break free from that, it's disappointing in some ways. Like I have to stop talking about the fossil Pokemon.
Oh yeah, those aren't great.
I'm very upset about the fossil Pokemon, and I will give no quarter to.
I like the idea of the fossil Pokemon.
Yeah.
But no, they should have just had the proper designs instead of the weird mix mash thing. Although Dracovish is best boy. Oh my god,
Dracovish is so powerful, apparently.
Yeah,
oh, he's broken, and it's like, thank you, Mr. Fish. He's my favorite little nightmare abomination.
Yeah, the concept behind them is really good. Like they really run away with the whole. The UK, when they started finding fossils, they decided to sandwich them together without planning anything. Oh no, we've created an abomination kind of thing. But, it would be nice if at some point they created the other half of those fossils. I did watch a video on YouTube the other day, which somebody redesigned the other half and made them complete, like Pokemon. So, the fish one was complete and whatever. They were really cool. And I was like, I want to see this. I really want to see this. So, yeah, I love the concept of them. But, yeah, they don't. I feel sorry for them. That fish one cannot breathe out of water. How is it surviving? Please help it,
on the back of its head.
Yeah, I know.
Pokemon Sword and Shield. I think all 5 of us played it at least a little bit, but it's a very mixed. It's a very mixed bag of success and failure, and it really depends on who you ask as to how good this game is. I liked it a lot, but it wasn't really one of my favorites of the year. But let's see, Nathan. There's at least one game on this list that I know is your favorite of the year. So do you want to talk about that one, or something else in our little lineup?
Save it for a little bit later.
Okay.
Let's talk about Persona Q2 for a bit.
All right. Now, Nathan, I got halfway, or maybe a little bit less than halfway, through Persona Q2. Around how far did you make it?
I'm about the same as you. I got through maybe... I think I'm close to the end of the second movie.
I'm at exactly the same place. I'm like at the final boss of the second movie.
Okay, so it's like I think it's the same for both of us then.
Mm-hmm.
But I got waylaid by other games. But Persona
Me
Q2
too.
for what I played was pretty fun, and it's a good way to send out the 3DS, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the last 3DS game that'll be released in North America. Probably not, but it's a 3DS game that released in June of 2019, so it's definitely part of the final wave of the 3DS. And as a last hurrah, I think it's really good so far. I loved the first Persona Q. I did play that one to completion, and Persona Q2 has sort of a similar idea. They have a new central character, and multiple Persona characters are sort of pulled through dimensions into a strange space to try and save or resolve the conflict of this new character. And the new character is I forget her name. What's the girl who's stuck watching the 4 movies?
Hikari, I think?
Yeah, Hikari. It's a girl named Hikari who is basically sort of trapped in her own emotions, and she's watching movies that have rather horrible endings. Like the first one is a superhero movie where the lesson that they teach you at the end is that you should always listen to the voice of authority, and adults are always right and children are never right. The Persona 5 cast is like, well, this is all wrong. We're all about rebelling against authority. So they end up stuck in the movie and then end up basically defeating the villains in the movie to change the ending so that the new moral is that individuality and disagreeing with authority is normal and okay. And basically, I think the idea is they go through 4 movie dungeons that are sort of crushing this girl emotionally and representing things in her life that are sort of oppressing her. And changing, and by beating the dungeons, you change the endings of the movies to have her come out of her shell more. And then by the end, there's definitely some supernatural shenanigans that I don't know exactly how they go yet, because again, I only made it through the first 2 movies. But it's the movies themselves are Etrian Odyssey style dungeons that are heavy with Persona stuff and lore and cool visual ideas. And eventually, once you have the Persona 3 and 4 casts joining you, I think there's something like 25 to 30 playable characters, so the amount of character tinkering and party designing you can do is insane. It was already pretty crazy in the first Persona Q, but this just ratchets it all up. I think that the third movie has some Persona 3 stuff in it, because the second movie is a disaster / dinosaur movie with Yosuke Saurus in it. For Persona fans, if you wanted to see the casts of Personas 3 through 5 interact in a mostly goofy way, it's fun. And if you want 4 or 5 really meaty story dungeons, this will scratch that itch as well. I really liked Persona Q. I think I want to try and finish it in 2020, but it's 100% Persona and Etrian Odyssey fan service, and that is okay and great.
Yeah, I can agree with all that. It's a game that I feel bad about leaving behind, but maybe one day I'll be able to go back and return to it. I think part of the issue is that it was released on 3DS, and I kind of wanted it to be a Switch game. But, trying to go back to the 3DS when the Switch has been out for 2 years, it's kind of like going back to the old. I don't know how to say it, but it just feels like stepping back into time.
That was a weird problem with this year. Not to change the subject, but Mario and Luigi put out the Bowser's Inside Story remake earlier this year.
Was that the end of 2018 or early 2019?
It was January.
Oh, okay.
Bombed.
Oh, I see.
Now Alpha Dream is going out of business, and I'm like, yeah, why did you do this to begin with?
Yeah.
If you put a Mario and Luigi game on Switch, I feel like then they would have done really well. but instead you're tethering it to this system that, I mean, no one's buying games for right now.
I feel like it's kind of I feel this with a lot of different consoles and stuff where like it feels like going 2 generations back is easier than going 1 because like there's this greater sense of nostalgia. You know, I've been playing DS games and like those seem like I've been really enjoying that, but playing a 3DS game seems it seems a bit out of it right now because it's not quite what the current gen is providing, and it's not kind of possessed of that nostalgia just yet. It just feels kind of old.
Maybe. I think for Nintendo, this is the very end of the split generation. Like, you know, that awkward period where, say, Guitar Hero 3 came out for PS2 and PS3 and Xbox and 360. Like, there's always that sort of overlapping period where things will come out for multiple systems, even though everyone that is straddling that split generation sort of wants people to move on to the new system. I think that probably in the case of Persona Q2 and the Bowser's Inside Story remake, they were both reutilizing assets from previous games, because Persona Q2 looks just like Persona Q1, and the Bowser's Inside Story remake probably reused some assets from the Superstar Saga remake.
They've been reusing assets since Dream Team.
Probably, yes. So there were technical reasons and hardware reasons for them to stick to the same system. Also, I think that the touchscreen drawing stuff would not have been as good on Switch, specific to Persona Q2, because there's a lot of map drawing and note taking in the Persona Q games, and what the Etrian Odyssey series has been doing for over a decade is very, very logical with a dual screen setup. So I think that the bottom screen of the 3DS is sort of a more malleable, more intentional touch screen than the Switch's touch screen, which isn't a bad touch screen, but I think Persona Q2. Yeah, Persona Q2 would have been good on the Switch. They definitely could have pulled it off. I was okay with this being a 3DS game, but I'm also sort of thinking of it as maybe the last new 3DS game that I will buy. Not new 3DS specifically. Like, it'll be the last 3DS game that I buy new. Mm-hmm. It makes me a little sad because I thought the 3DS was really strong.
It was great.
Yeah, it's always
But I mean, if you had to mention one current generation console that people get the most excited about, it's probably the Switch, right? So.
Yeah, right.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
makes sense that it's the end.
How many times have we said put it on the Switch in 2018 and 2019?
We have a whole feature for it.
Indeed we do.
And some of those have come true.
Right, so Alana, I'm not going to ask you to specifically stick to the Switch, but is there a game on the list here that we should move on to next?
Yeah, I'll come off the Switch for a bit then. Let's talk about Trails of Cold Steel 3.
Ooh.
That's a mammoth, isn't it?
This is one of those games where if you played it to the end, it's probably one of your 3 favorite games of the past 5 years. But if you aren't already in Cold Steel 3, you're sort of just shrugging and going, I don't know about this.
Yeah, well, it's really difficult because Cold Steel, like, there was a big debate before it came out, like, obviously it's getting a Switch port now. None of the other games in the series are on Switch, so there's a big debate by the fans. Where do you start? Not Cold Steel 3 is the general consensus, and I think you could, but I would at least recommend playing Cold Steel 1 and Cold Steel 2 first, at the bare minimum. That being said, there is also Trails in the Sky, first chapter, second chapter, the third, and the 2 Crossbell games that are not available in English officially.
So depending on how you want to frame it, this is either the 3rd game in a 4-game cycle or the 8th game in a 9-game cycle.
It's definitely the 8th game in a 9-game cycle.
Yeah, and if you aren't already in the Trails microcosm, which is understandable because that's a lot of video game, it's a little intimidating.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm coming into Cold Steel 3 having only played 1 and 2, so I haven't even played Sky or...
Yeah, I'm in an even weirder position. I've played Sky 1 and 2, but not 3, and I played Cold Steel 1, but not 2, and I haven't played either of the Crossbell PSP games, which I don't know if we'll ever get them officially in English. I'm basically 50-50 on guessing that. But Cold Steel 3... if you do come into it with at least having played 1 and 2, it's a pretty satisfying RPG front to back. I mean, just hearing Caitlin talk about it both privately and on Random Encounter, this is a good one. One of the good ones is what the fan base is telling me.
One of the best ones, I think. My favorite of the 3 so far, I would say. It's just really satisfying. Like, mechanically, it's much tighter, it's a lot more accessible, it's a lot faster. They clean up some of the menus a little bit. You know, the graphics are actually... I'm not saying that they're bad on, like, Cold Steel 1 and 2, but, like, it feels like a step forward. Falcom have never been, like, the best technical, you know...
And this one isn't married to the PS Vita hardware the way the first 2 were.
Exactly, yeah. So this is a PS4 game straight up. It's not the best looking PS4 game, but I think it's appealing. It just... I think for me, what makes it is that it's just super satisfying. Like, you've got all your friends from the first 2 games. There's been a year since the second, about a year and a half since the end of the second game. Serene is now a teacher, so you've got this new cast of characters coming in. They fit in perfectly. The old cast drop in and out. You've got characters from the Crossbell games coming in. You've got characters from Trails in the Sky coming in.
Oh, I'll be so happy to see them again. I'm really attached to several Trails in the Sky characters.
Yeah, Agate is in your party for a while. It's great. Agate is extremely overpowered, and Tita goes to the school that you teach at.
Oh, that's adorable. Just perfect. Does she join your party properly?
In one dungeon, yes.
Teenage Tita would get me more excited about this game.
She is super adorable. She's actually one of the shopkeepers for most of the game, so you do get to see her a lot.
That sort of fits. Is she like the George of the game then, maybe?
Yes, pretty much.
Okay, that is in character for her, and I'm okay with this. I accept this, Alana.
Yeah, there's a reason she's at the school. It's because she's under the wing of one of the other big science people in Zamuria.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah, I just think it's a really solid, satisfying way to knit all of the games together, because that's what it is, really. It just brings together all of those characters, all of those stories, and it builds up to something really big. One issue I do have with the first 2 games is the pacing is a little bit off, especially in 2. Like, the middle 20 hours are kind of difficult to get through. I think Cold Steel 3's pacing is really excellent, and there's something happening all the time, whether you're at school or on a field trip, or, like, you know, there's always something going on and you're always thinking about what's going to happen next. And I haven't quite finished it yet, but my jaw has dropped multiple times already, and
not just because of not just because of Eustace and Machias talking about the other.
They have not been on screen together yet.
That is an incredible tease on the part of Nihon Falcom.
It is, yeah. They do get. I'm near the reunion. So a lot of the games building up to Cold Steel, to Class 7 rejoining. They've made a promise to get back together again, and I'm almost at that. That's where I am. So I'm like middle of Chapter 4. So I'm quite near the end, but I'm 70 hours in, and I've probably still got 20 hours to go, I would say. So it's longer than 1 and 2, which are both 60 plus hours. But I have never been bored. It's really strong from a story standpoint. There's a lot of really good reveals. Some old favorites from Ouroboros is back. Campanella's back for Trails in the Sky fans.
Campanella's not my favorite.
Your favorites are not back, I'm afraid.
Oh, I don't think. My favorites are a couple of the ones from Trails in the Sky too. And I think I'm not expecting them to be back. But we alluded to this a little bit, Alana. The Trails in the Sky, I should say the Trails or Kiseki saga in this game, because Trails in the Sky 1 is technically Legend of Heroes 6 or something. I'm gonna get all those numbers wrong if I attempt to. But it's intended to be a number of games in the 14 to 20 range eventually, I think. But they're also comprised of these mini arcs. The first 2 Trails in the Sky games are sort of a duology, and the third one is like an addendum. The two Crossbell games are definitely in the same story arc. And I think that Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, you could probably accept them as either 2 pairs or as a tetralogy, because the way that they're set up. Like Cold Steel 2 has some definitive ending things, and Cold Steel 3 does not. I know you haven't gotten there, but I am under the impression it ends on a semi-cliffhanger.
Oh, definitely, because quite famously, people absolutely expected Cold Steel 3 to be the end when it came out in Japan, and quite, obviously they announced Cold Steel 4 not too long after 3 came out, so
I'm sure there is I'm sure there's a story justification for that, even though neither you nor I are 100% aware of what it is. But
I know Caitlin is shook.
Oh, yes, we are agreed there. But I'm excited because, again, I've only played 3 of the Trails games to completion, Sky 1, Sky 2, and Cold Steel 1. But they're all really good. The characters are really likable, and the writing is really strong in every Trails game that I've played. If I were to put Nihon Falcom into a box and say they only have 2 major series, which is false, but like Ys is sort of about the action and the adventure, and Trails is more about the world building and the writing and the characters, and they absolutely have delivered on the world building and the characters in the 3 that I've played. And if you're telling me Cold Steel 3 is one of the best of the whole set of 9, if we include 4, that's astounding. This is a must-play game. If people that enjoy RPGs and have some old school tolerance for slow moving plots and large amounts of reading, these are must play games. And if Cold Steel 3 is one of the best of them, then even though I haven't played a second of it outside the E3 demo, that's a hell of an RPG.
It is extremely good, and I'm hoping that NISA have done a pretty good job on the localization, better than most people expected, which is good.
I think that NISA had a really bad misstep with the first pass of Ys 8, but other than that, they've done a pretty good job with most of their localization projects.
It's not perfect, but the issues are less noticeable. And there's no technical problems either.
Okay,
maybe the
well, that's also good.
Yeah, and they've also been pushing the advertisement on it way more, and it deserves to be ported to Switch, because I think people will play it in isolation, which I think is fine. You won't get a lot of references, and you won't get a lot of the backstory of a lot of characters. Mm-hmm. But if this makes more people buy the Trails series, then I am all for it, personally.
Yeah, I will. My eyes will glaze over whenever they talk about cross-bell stuff in this game, if and when I eventually play it, because I know very little about the 2 cross-bell games.
There's only some name drops and event stuff and that.
So isn't one of the major characters in Crossbell another teacher alongside Rean?
Randy Orlando.
Yeah,
Randy Orlando is fabulous. I love him.
I when I saw that he was one of the core characters at the new school, I'm like, oh, okay, Crossbell guy. Well, I hope he's cool. But
He is. It's very cool.
I need to catch up on this series.
Yeah, Peter, it's worth it. Every time I get one game deeper, I've liked it more and more. My favorite is probably Trails in the Sky 2, but that could change with the next game I play very easily.
I'm hoping they'll do console ports of Trails in the Sky the same way they did Cold Steel. They
did in Japan. I'm not sure if we're getting those in English.
Yeah, they did PS Vita ones, didn't they? Evolution, was that what they were called? The Sky games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, the Cold Steel 3 came PS3 first. It was PS3, then PC, then PS4. Cold Steel 1 and 2, sorry.
Yep, split generation, just like that.
Yeah, exactly. But the 2 ports came out this year, actually, and they're good. There's more dialogue, faster. You've got speed up option and...
Oh, yeah. I know. When we recorded the podcast on that, Alana, you, Zach, and Caitlin all played the turbo version, and I was stuck with the Vita version that I bought in 2015.
But funnily enough, by a third of the way through 2, I've stopped using turbo.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I'm used to it now.
Playing on Vita, I was able to play the game while I was watching, baseball or professional wrestling or something, which is also an extreme, an extreme positive of playing games on handhelds.
Agreed.
But we've already put a lot of time into talking Cold Steel 3 on various podcasts on the website, so I think we need to move on before this episode ends up being 2 hours. I want to talk about something that was maybe, we don't need to go into this a lot, but that was something that was maybe my favorite surprise of 2019, and that was an honest-to-God localization of Seiken Densetsu 3.
Yeah.
An official English language release of the Collection of Mana game for Switch, which I think came out in Japan in 2017. gave us the original untouched emulated versions of Final Fantasy Adventure and Secret of Mana, plus a brand new localization of Seiken Densetsu 3, now rechristened Trials of Mana. So, and Trials of Mana is one of my favorite games of all time. I first played a bootleg English translation of it in the early 2000s, probably 02 or 03 range, and I've been talking it up on internet message boards and podcasts ever since. I was a regular fixture on the GameFAQs.com board for that game of all things in the mid 2000s, which is a hell of a mid 2000s thing to say, but. Trials of Mana is an all-time favorite, and having a legal translated version of it that I could buy and play, and my friends were playing, was so exciting to me. That game's great. Alana, you were on that podcast with me in July, and I mean, how good is Trials of Mana? And you reviewed the entire collection, in fact. So how are those games?
Delightful. They're perfect. Well, they're not perfect, but like Trials of Mana. I think I said as much. Trials of Mana was the one game, like, if I had to give up a body part to play a game, it would be that. And I got it without giving up a body part. And it's fantastic. I've done 2 playthroughs, and I'm halfway through a third one.
That's where I am, too. I did one playthrough for the podcast, and then was playing it off and on throughout the summer and fall, and finished a second, and I'm partway through a third. There's so much replayability in Trials of Mana, because there's 6 main characters that each have 4 sort of build directions with how you build up their stats and skills, and you only choose 3 of the 6 at the beginning to form your party, so the number of combinations is crazy. You have to beat the game at least 6 times if you want to use every possible combination. No, I'm sorry, it's 8 times, not 6.
It is 8 times to use every job.
Yeah, and I have done that. I think there's only 1 or 2 jobs that I haven't played in my various playthroughs over the past 15 years, and that's because those are the jobs that everyone says sucks. But it's one of my all-time favorite games. This is a very functional, good translation and port, and I implore everyone that can play it to play it. It was my happiest surprise of the whole year to get to hear that announcement at E3. And Alana, you and I were in the same room together when we heard that announcement, and you saw me lose my damn mind in real time.
I lost my damn mind in real time as well. And we're getting a remake
and
well
we're getting a 2020 remake for the game's 25th anniversary of its Japanese release. My 6 beautiful children are more beautiful than ever, and I'm really excited to play that game when it comes out. It's coming out on PS4 and Switch, and maybe also PC, but definitely those first 2. So I'm going to be playing many different versions and character combinations of Trials of Mana in 2019 and 2020, and I could not be happier.
When the remake comes out for Trials of Mana, that's when I'll definitely be playing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if it preserves like 80% of the things I love about the Super Famicom version, then it is absolutely worth playing.
Yeah.
I mean it's going to feel different, and I don't know exactly how many changes they're going to make mechanically. Of course, there's the difference between the isometric combat and the 3D combat. That's worlds apart. But like I said a second ago, if they keep most of it feeling the same, and it's true to the spirit of the old Trials of Mana, then it's going to be great. So I really hope it's good.
It looks like they've at least learned a lesson from the Secret of Mana remake. So I'm ready.
Right on, but that's a game from 1995. We maybe shouldn't be talking about it too much in a 2019 year in review episode. So, does anyone have something that they feel strongly about that we need to bring up next?
Is it time to talk about Fire Emblem?
It's as good a time as any to talk about Fire Emblem.
I like it, guys.
That is one difference between Three Houses and Fates.
Oh my! I wasn't expecting this, but I think Three Houses might be the best game I played all year, and I wasn't expecting that.
I think it's been delightful as an outsider to see the reaction from the fans, the voice actors, everything. Like, the buzz around this game is extremely, like, positive, and
They really hit it out of the park.
Really good, yeah.
I really think they want to build the Fire Emblem community with this game, because this game has always had a very passionate niche community, and with Three Houses, they were trying to build that community as much as they could. They had the voice actors interacting with the fans. They were promoted this game pretty heavily. I see ads for it on YouTube, which is definitely not the case of any other Fire Emblem game I've played. And basically, they are just trying to stoke the flames of fan excitement as much as they can. And this is on top of it being a really satisfying, good strategy RPG already.
So who was everyone's favorite house? I went Black Eagles my first run, so I'm kind of tempted to go with them.
Yeah, same here. Because I went with Black Eagles first. I was also like, they ended up still being my favorite house, but I'm playing Blue Lions now, and it might pass Black Eagles, maybe.
Oh, wow.
May convert me. We'll see.
No,
I did not expect that.
I haven't played it yet, but my first pick would be the Golden Deer house. If only for Joe Zija hanging upside down on a camera, just to advertise that he was the voice actor for it. But I think, like, I've heard different things about each of the paths, and they sound all really different. So if I can ask, is it that the first half of the games are fairly similar outside of class interactions, or are they pretty different the whole way through? Because I know there's obviously a split at some point in the game. So they change one part. So are they, like, pretty similar first half and then very different second half, or is it a bit more than that?
Yeah, so basically the first half of the story is general, so that's across all paths. You all experience the same general story. So all the major events happen like the same way through all stories, and then the second half will be different.
Right, geez, so that's potentially like 60 hours each story, and there's at least 3 storylines that I know of. So yeah, that's a lot, and obviously there's tons of characters. Do any of you have a favorite of any of the houses other than the house leaders? Because we know Edelgard is great, and Dimitri is great, and Claude is great. So
it's so hard to pick favorites. Just like when I try to think of a ranking for all these characters, it's really hard because I'm just like, man, I really like this character's personality and character, but then, you know, maybe they're not as good as a unit, but then this character is, you know, great as a unit, but, you know, maybe don't feel as strong as them as a character. So it's kind of like, where do I really want to rank these characters? The feelings I get for this cast of characters is unlike any other Fire Emblem game I've experienced in quite some time.
Yeah, that's the impression I'm getting. They're all the dialogue voiced as well? Is that right?
Yeah, it's all fully voiced.
Wow, that probably helps a lot then, I would think.
Yeah, see, I think that's to me where Three Houses succeeds where other Fire Emblems didn't. Is it makes the multiple faction thing work because every faction has likable members and believable motivations.
So you're telling me that one of the factions isn't ruled by a king who's actively trying to murder his own child?
Yeah, exactly. There's no, oh yeah, you can totally side with Nor, but Nor is so cartoonishly evil. It's like, there's no moral gray area there. Three Houses, though, every side, I don't want to get into specifics, but like, these characters have believable motivations, and you can understand where they're coming from, even if they have to do horrible things to get there. And a unique shared history that informs their actions, and it really does get into some morally gray territory that I adore. Like, it's the kind of storytelling that Fire Emblem has been, in my opinion, sorely missing for a long time. Where like I honestly feel bad about having to choose a side.
Like, I remember, like, after I finished my Black Eagles run, and thinking, like, oh man, there was the playthroughs aren't, like, I'm not going to get the same feeling, or I'm not going to be able to side with this one character for, you know, all these other playthroughs. It's going to, like, and there's the one cutscene through in the later part of the game that just, like, it killed me.
Oh my god. Well, I remember reading, like, you think about, there's been all these, like, games of the decade or games of the last 10 years posts. Like, someone posted a snapshot of a couple of wiki articles from the Fire Emblem series. In 2009, Fire Emblem was going to be shut down. Like, they were like, if the next game doesn't sell really well, then that's it, we're pulling the plug on it. 10 years later, Fire Emblem Three Houses is the biggest selling game in the series, potentially.
Yeah.
That is a hell of a redemption arc.
I think Fire Emblem Awakening basically saved the series because they were disappointed in how poorly Radiant Dawn and the 2 DS games sold, even though the second DS game didn't come out worldwide. But Awakening was a big success. Then Fates became the number one seller in the series, probably because it followed Awakening. And then this one has had as much community and critical acclaim as Awakening, which was a very popular one, and better selling numbers than Fates, which is absolutely peak Fire Emblem. It's great that there's a Fire Emblem game that the fans are behind and excited about. It's great. I haven't played Three Houses yet, even though I'm a Fire Emblem fan who's had many highs and lows playing that series over the years. But I'm excited too. It's one of my bigger video game regrets of 2019 is not getting to that one. But I will eventually.
Yeah, me too.
I think one of the big things for Fire Emblem Three Houses was actually uniting the fan base for once, because there's always that clear gap between the old guard, right? The people who have played, Fire Emblem since the beginning of time, and then there's people who have played Fire Emblem since Awakening. But for the first time, I think, since Awakening came out, the Fire Emblem community has actually been united on one game.
Fates tried to have it both ways, with the Conquest route playing like an older Fire Emblem game, and the
Birthright?
The Birthright route playing more like Awakening. But just tonally, those games were so weird and not really successful that I think that the fan base did not accept it as hotly as they did Awakening. But Three Houses has united the clans, as it were, and it's I've heard maybe not only positive but overwhelmingly positive reception about it, and it's, again, I'm happy that it's good again.
Firmly back on board with Fire Emblem, and I'm really happy to say that. Like, I am so happy to be proved to be wrong. Like, it's a really good game. It's a really special game. I think it honestly might be my overall game of the year, and I'm going to be playing through the other routes probably throughout 2019. So 2020.
Yeah.
Speaking of comebacks, there's one other comeback I want to mention on this episode for sure, and that is the only Japanese game developer I awkwardly met at an airport in Los Angeles, and that is Koji Igarashi. He was the Castlevania showrunner for many years. He was the co-director of Castlevania Symphony of the Night in 97-98, and then was the architect of most of the Castlevania games in the 2000s. Not every single one. Basically, those non-linear RPG-like Castlevania games were often referred to as Igavanias because of him. And he left Konami under not the best of terms in the early 2010s, but then came back with a Kickstarter project, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, that was originally going to come out in 2017, but didn't land until summer 2019, which gave me all kinds of anxiety. I was worried this game would be bad. I openly said that on podcasts even. I'm 100% certain I did. So I was very worried about this game, especially since there was a lot of high-profile Kickstarter failures in that 2017 to 2019 range. And not everybody can be, an FTL or a Shovel Knight in the or even a Broken Age. But Alana, Bloodstained was really good.
Bloodstained blew my expectations out of the water. I was so delighted with it.
Me too.
I played the PS4 version, and I know the Switch version has issues.
I played the Switch version, and it did have issues, but none of them were deal breakers. But maybe play that on PC or PS4 if you have a choice, listeners.
Right, yeah, which is a shame, because the Switch is how I wanted to play it, because I played all the handheld Castlevanias. It's the perfect system to play them on.
It was so delayed in coming out that I ended up switching my pre-order that came with my Kickstarter backing from Vita to PS4 to Switch before it actually arrived.
Yeah, I think that was the issue, wasn't it? It was originally going to be built for the Wii U.
And originally had it originally had Wii U and also 3DS versions options available. But again, it was a slightly troubled Kickstarter campaign, which did nothing for my confidence in the game, which made it such a delightful surprise that it ended up great. And it's a really cool large area to explore with some parts that would be familiar to Castlevania fans, like a nice big hallway gallery for the entrance to the castle, segments on trains and in labs. Like, it's a Castlevania in all but name, but has so much extra stuff and so many new features and new things that aren't in the old Igavania games that it felt like a really good or great one of those without being complete mimicry. Do you know what I mean? Because like Miriam has similarities to Shanoa from Order of Ecclesia, and a lot of the castle navigation and even how Miriam moves feels like old Castlevania games. But there's a bunch of stuff in here that wasn't in those old Castlevania games, to the very least of which isn't the insane amount of crafting you do. But it's just a really, really strong nonlinear 2D action RPG or whatever you want to call it without saying the M word.
I would say the M word. I like the M word.
Okay.
It is a word I am fond of.
You can say the M word.
But
Monster Hunter.
That
You
one.
can
That one,
also say that M word. I accept this.
That's the M word you accept. But like you've already said, like the crafting system is extremely depth. There are actual side quests in this game, which there's been a couple on and off, like with the shopkeeper and Portrait of Ruin, but none to the degree of like, I know they're mostly fetch quests, but it's quite fun because it unlocks more items that you might need for other quests and things like that. You know, Miriam, you can dress Miriam up and change her hairstyle. This is extremely important. There are giant cats that pop through the wall. There are dismembered dog heads. There are some really fun areas of the castle, like you know, you've already listed off some of the classics. I would like to ask, why does a castle need 3 sorcery labs?
I don't know.
One of my strangest things. There is an area where all the enemies are giant, and then there's an ice cave as well, which is maybe a bit underutilized, but you know.
I think the ice cave is the cold storage where they keep the vampire coffins they really don't want opening up.
Exactly, yeah. And you know, the story is total ham. Like, I don't really care about
You have to discover photography and talk to a vampire librarian to make an ID card to swipe through the gate of a demon train and then ride the demon train around in a circuit for a while and get off of it before it crashes or explodes. I forget which. That's not your granddad's Castlevania game, but
No,
it's
exactly.
Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is definitely Igarashi trying to make a new Igavania, and I am so happy at how it turned out. It is really, really fun.
Particularly surprising, given that Metroidvanias are basically the indie genre darling. Like, all the time.
There was a bunch
How many of them have there been over the last 10 years?
A bunch of good ones, like and I mean, Time Spinner and Shadow Complex alone makes me feel like it's justified as a genre, and Igarashi, you know, coming back after I don't know how long, 6-7 years. From working with Konami, he's like, all right, let me show all these kids how it's done. and they brought back Michiru Yamane to do the soundtrack. They brought back the original voice actor of Alucard to voice the vampire librarian. and
is such a good idea.
Yeah, and they also bring in David Hayter to be a demon hunting samurai, and he's great. There's so much, and like you feel Igarashi sort of in his element making this game while also throwing up 2 giant middle fingers to Konami on the way out the door. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, this is a great video game.
It was the year of middle fingers to Konami.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly was.
I want to read that. If I could read Japanese, I would want to read whatever text chain is happening between Igarashi and Kojima. Because you know it was definitely getting spicy around August or so.
I just imagine, the entire month of August was just them messaging, girl, I know, like just back and forth.
Yeah, lots of whip crack emojis from Igarashi. I'm certain of it.
How do you think Norman Reedus feels knowing that the entire world has seen his butt now?
I think he's fine with it. I honestly don't think he has a problem with it.
I've seen Norman Reedus' butt so many times now from playing through Death Stranding that like it just doesn't even register. It's just like it's a part of me now, you know? Like
my butt is a part of me.
Yeah,
it's the most profound thing ever said in an RPG fan podcast.
I've seen Norman Reedus' butt more than my own, you know? Like it's just this
Norman Reedus' butt is a part of all of us now.
Into the life strain.
It's a circle of life. But let's talk about something besides Norman Reedus' butt. The website doesn't cover Death Stranding, perhaps regrettably. What's something else we absolutely have to talk about?
I mean, would you like another, not Kickstarter game, but would you like another game that was funded online that I really liked? And I think I might be one of the only people who's played it on the site.
Oh?
I don't know. Indivisible?
Yeah, of course, yeah. I was really intrigued by that, especially because it has a pretty insanely diverse source of inspiration for its character designs.
Jeez, yeah.
And so number one, the character designs, and number two, they are really trying to scratch that Valkyrie profile itch with the gameplay.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, Indivisible was funded on Indiegogo, so a similar situation. It's made by some of the people who made Skullgirls, Hiroki Kikuta, the composer of Secret of Mana, Trials of Mana, et al.
And one of the showrunners for Kudelka and Shadow Hearts.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
So there's a big pedigree behind it, and I think it largely lives up to a lot of the namesake. I adored it because of the cultural representation. I think it's extremely authentic. A lot of the development team are from those areas or have some kind of knowledge and passion of those areas and that mythology from... It's majoritively Southeast Asia, but you do have cultures from South America.
South Asia and Southeast Asia and South and Latin America. And most importantly of all, of course, there's a Kamen Rider character, which...
Oh my god, though! He's so good!
When you showed me an image of him, I think my eyes popped out of my head like a Tex Avery Wolf character chasing after Droopy Dog. That was... Yeah. These character designs are awesome.
I'd forgotten about him, and while I was reviewing it, I came across him, and he turns up, and when he turns up, he goes, "I'm here!" And I'm like... Oh my god. And then every time he leaves, I go, "I'm gone!" And then he runs off or disappears, and I'm just like, this is it. This is the best character in this game. You can't tell me anything else.
Japanese superheroes are a delight, and this is clearly a character written by a fan who loves tokusatsu like a true fan does. I have zero doubt about it.
Yeah, but I think that's my favorite thing about this game. Other than I enjoy the combat, I love the platforming because... It is kind of a Metroidvania in a sense. The maps are all segmented, so you have 5 different areas. As you learn more skills, you can go and collect more items and go further in the story and so on and so forth. But the characters, the world, the visuals, oh my god, the visuals are stunning. Hand-drawn art is one of my favorite things anyway, hand-drawn cartoons. They nail it. It's some of my favorite. It just brings so much expression and so much life into the characters. Some of them only get maybe 10 lines of dialogue. They get a side quest each, but just by using them in battle and the way that they move, you get so much personality out of them. There's a...
And aren't there something 15 or 20 of them?
There's 24, I believe.
Yikes!
With 2 more to be added as part of free DLC and also additional characters from other games. So Shovel Knight is going to be in there.
Yacht Club Games is excited to put Shovel Knight in everything in a way that's very amusing and not cheap.
There's a character from Skullgirls as well going to be in there.
Which one?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Do you know what her weapon was? Or because I played a little bit of Skullgirls.
Yeah, no, I don't. I'm afraid I only played a bit as well. So.
I mained Parasol for the many Skullgirls fans in our audience, of course.
So yeah, there's a few cameo characters popping in and things like that, so it'll be really good. But yeah, just the fluidity and the movement of each character gives them so much personality. The combat is very Valkyrie profile. It's very RPG light though. All stats are tied to Ajna, who is the main character. There's no level system. There's no upgrading of stats. So really it's just if you collect certain items, your party level goes up. But there's plenty of collecting and plenty of the combat is very definitely Valkyrie profile, mixed up with some fighting games, beat 'em up style stuff. So you're already tapping on 3 genres that I'm really deep into. So I'm already halfway there.
Yeah, I'm looking at the DLC right now.
Go for
it. We have Red, the main character of Transistor, Shantae from the Shantae video games, Shovel Knight, Baz from Dive Kick, Zachosaurus from Time Force, Juan, the main character of Guacamelee.
Oh my god!
And Annie from Skullgirls, who's not my favorite Skullgirls character. I think she might have been from a later version of the game that I didn't play. I'm struggling to remember what Annie was like, but both eyebrows are up.
Right?
That's really fascinating.
It's superb. I can't wait to see how they implement them. So yeah, I think Indivisible is really worth picking up. It is due a Switch port like most things, eventually. It didn't happen because it was a late switch in the design and the development process, again similar to Bloodstained. Like, it was originally going to be on the Wii U, it was added and then swapped, but it's going through some patches at the moment because there are some things that aren't as clear. Like, there's no real tutorial for the combat. It is pretty in depth when you get to it. Like, there's only like 3 or 4 attack buttons, but like depending on, well, there's 4 characters in the party, and like X, square, triangle, circle, like Valkyrie profile is an addendum to each character. So they are adding like tutorials and things, and every character does play very differently. So I had to do a lot of experimenting to find out what worked. But I think it's certainly worth picking up or even trying out a demo and seeing if you're interested, because damn, it's polished, and it just put a big smile on my face, which I think is one of the best things you can say about anything. Well, it's one of the best things, I think.
Excellent. I have read and seen a lot of Indivisible stuff, but it came out in the fall when I was really busy with different things, including multiple podcast projects, so I regrettably wasn't able to get to it. But you have a review on the site, Alana, and I was really excited by a lot of the character designs I saw in Indivisible, so I will get to it eventually. Let's see, what else is on the list that we definitely want to hit?
Did want to give a shout out to Disco Elysium, which has become a game which I will have to play at this point.
Yeah, that's a game that's developed in, it was in Eastern Europe. I think the writer is from Poland. It's about sort of a metropolis that recently had a failed communist revolution, and you're a detective trying to solve a pretty elaborate mystery. It plays like a classic CRPG from the Icewind Dale Planescape Torment era. And it incorporates stats and character building in ways that are very, very smart. And people are saying it's one of the best playing sort of dialogue-heavy RPGs of the past several years. So, something like a Pillars of Eternity, if it was urban and modern and had just incredible dialogue.
There's no combat, is there?
Yeah, there's no combat in it.
There are stat checks where you can build your strength and intimidation stats and then fight someone, but it's strictly stat checks and dice rolls and not systemic combat.
Exactly, which I think which one appeals to me, and two, I think is really going to help this game age well, along with its art style, which it has a very distinctive, fantastic art style. But I think not having a dedicated combat system is really going to help this game age well, because the art and the combat are the two biggest, basically the two biggest criticisms of Planescape Torment 20 years later. People will still give a lot of credit to the writing, but people are like, the visuals. One, it's going to be coming to consoles in 2020 at least, PS4 and Xbox One. It'd be great if they put on Switch too, but it's definitely something that I have to play now for how interesting it looks, and for the fact that at the Game Awards, when they won Best Narrative, I believe they thanked Marx and Engels for political education. So I read an interview with Robert Kurvitz, who was kind of the lead developer on Disco Elysium, and I really liked what he had said when he compared, in a way, the attempts of Emile Zola to kind of capture culture. He said it's a really lofty ambition to try to capture the culture zeitgeist or try to win it for particular political means, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try.
They're coming from an unusual place, because these are people who have a lot of communist and socialist ideas that are also from places that had a failed communist state ruling over them for decades. They'll see the I don't want to say strengths and weaknesses, but they'll see they have ideas about these political ideologies experientially different than we would have them as Americans and as British people. So so it's a perspective that I am really interested to hear. And let me just describe to you one encounter from the game that I think can happen at different points. But the person that I was reading the article about said happened early for them. There's a place you have to go that has a large sort of bouncer or bodyguard defending it. And you can, if you have a very high strength or intimidation score, you can try fighting him, but it needs to be very high, and you'll probably lose. The other option to get by him is to listen to him talk. And this guy has a lot of very racist and fascist ideas. To get by him, you basically have to listen to him say his weird racist conspiracy theories for several minutes. And this is not set in a real world place. So like what they have for racism is not to the nationalities or races that we have on planet Earth today. It's its own world of things. But if you have an intellect or persuasiveness score high enough, you can sway him a little bit and cause him to rethink his ideas. So building your characters in different ways, you can either fight to get this person, or get this person to have a change of heart, or still get by him without either of those things, but you have to listen to weird racist creeds for 6 or 7 minutes. That's for an RPG to put you into that dialogue situation is just fascinating to me. Mm-hmm. It makes me want to experience that interaction for myself. And also, like, when you do some of your character creation stuff at the beginning, you can wipe away the smears off your mirror to see what you look like in the mirror, or you can not do that and have a sort of a blank space where your sort of facial appearance spot is for the rest of the game, without a visualization of your sense of self, which can affect gameplay. Like, things like that are just awesome and make me want to play this game. But alas, I haven't. I don't think anyone on this podcast has. So this is largely speculation, but exciting and intriguing speculation.
We do have a glowing review up on the site.
Yes,
one of the highest rated reviews on the year. It's only behind Shadowbringers. So,
we'll get to Shadowbringers, but there's one other. So that's most of Disco Elysium, which is also two very strange nouns to gather together for a title, but evidently it is. Evidently it is justified in a way. I want to talk about another high reviewed game on the site before we get to Shadowbringers. Alana, you and I recently played through AI: The Somnium Files.
Yeah.
Audra gave that game, I think, a 94.
Correct.
And
editor's choice.
Yeah, and it's another big comeback. This is Uchikoshi's first big game since Zero Escape, Zero Time Dilemma. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And oh boy, it's good. Visually, it's better than the Zero Escape trilogy. It has a very nice, tightly designed murder mystery that had me 100% invested from the get-go. The resolution is great. Most of the characters and dialogue are awesome. I was completely transfixed for the 25 or 30 hours playtime of this visual novel / adventure game. It's in that spectrum somewhere. I don't know exactly what would be the better place to put it, but it was awesome. Alana, what jumped out to you on AI: The Somnium Files?
I think I wasn't expecting it to have so much really outstanding characters. Like, there are some really strong character moments in this game, and I'm coming to this as someone who's never played the Zero Escape series. I will be fixing that, do not worry. But, like, I just wasn't really expecting, like, some in-depth... I mean, Mizuki, who is your not adopted daughter, but she's the main character, Kaname Date's roommate. She's the daughter of, like, a friend of his, who he's looking after. Oh my god, she kicks butt. Like, she's one of the best child characters in any video game ever. Like, she just rules. And I think, like, the atmosphere is it's really hard to balance humor with kind of shock. Like, AI: The Somnium Files is a dark game.
There are some chilling moments. I mean, you're investigating serial murders, and there are confrontations with corpses arranged horribly, and the killer themselves, who's a bit of a monster. But the dialogue and character work is outstanding in this game.
Yeah, like, some of the humor does get a bit annoying. Like, I've had enough of listening to porno magazine.
Yeah.
Humor.
Porno magazine humor is a shockingly important part of this game, at least 4 or 5 times.
Yeah. It was funny the first time, but not the other times. But yeah, like, I don't know, like, I was just totally gripped. Like, I had to know what was happening. Kind of similar to Danganronpa, like, I can't really pin my finger on, like, what the one thing is. The writing is really outstanding, but I was just totally absorbed, and it's really hard, because I can't really say anything beyond things.
Yeah, we absolutely don't want to spoil this game, because it's, some of the twists are very, very powerful. But you're basically a detective investigating these serial murders, and all of the victims have had their eye removed, so the killer is called the Cyclops Killer, and possibly connected. 6 years ago, you mysteriously lost your eye for unknown reasons. So you have a little AI eyeball in your missing eye socket, and your AI is a very, very sassy lady named Iba. She's great. I love Iba.
I do too.
And she gives you some special abilities like being able to zoom in long distances or see through some rudimentary X-ray with your robot eye, and do things like computer level calculations and analysis, which is nice for an adventure game gimmick. And also when you have an unwilling suspect or an unwilling subject, or in one case a young girl who's traumatized, you can use a special machine to put someone to sleep, and then enter their dream and see if they convey information from the crime they saw or a secret they're hiding by going through their dream, Inception style.
Right.
Which is and those dream places, which are called somnia or somniums maybe, are basically the game's puzzle stages, like the escape rooms in the Zero Escape series. And they're a little less puzzly, but very visually distinct and very atmospheric. They're less focused on puzzle mechanics like they were in Zero Escape, and more focused on the storytelling and the atmosphere. And it is awesome. Like this is a puzzle adventure game that's a little light on puzzle, but very heavy on the writing and drama, and it is awesome. I loved AI the Somnium Files.
Me too. I did not expect to love it as much as I did, but there you go. I guess I shouldn't have doubted, because Uchikoshi is already really highly regarded amongst you guys. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love 999 and VLR, and like ZTD a little bit less, but this is among Uchikoshi's best work, and it's excellent.
Yeah.
I will get to it probably early next year. It's on my list.
Very cool. Peter, is there something on the list that you want to address? Because I know you have to leave soon, dude.
I feel like we should probably do a quick mention of the Link's Awakening remake.
Yeah. Hey, that game is totally the same 1993 game that I loved decades ago, but it's beautiful and still awesome.
I feel like I feel like preserving like these older games and updating them for a modern audience is a really important thing. So I'm just excited that like Link's Awakening gets to see like a bit of a wider audience, and I'm hoping they give the Oracle games a similar treatment.
Yeah, that's what they could go with.
I love the Oracle games and wouldn't mind that remake either. And other than visually, this is basically the same game. I don't think they changed any of the puzzles in a meaningful way. They added a couple treasure chests and caves here and there. And of course, you don't have to, they gave dedicated buttons to the sword, shield, power glove, and Pegasus boots, or I should say power bracelet and Pegasus boots, so you don't have to do quite as much item switching as you did in the 2-button interface of the Game Boy. You have 6 buttons for items instead of 2.
That alone is just a huge improvement.
Oh, yes. The biggest improvement is not having to switch to your Pegasus boots and power bracelet all the time. But even on top of that, this is the same really excellent Game Boy game, but it looks beautiful. Like, all the characters look like amiibos. And I say that as someone who owns exactly 2 amiibos and doesn't love amiibos, but loves the look of this game.
Yeah, they're adorable.
And speaking of adorable, shout out to Marin, one of the best Zelda NPCs ever. She is just great, and they made her just as great as she deserves to be in this pretty remake.
It's a nice Zelda game to remake after how different Breath of the Wild was.
Oh yeah.
Like, mechanically, Link's Awakening is obviously very similar to other top-down Zelda games.
With apologies to Nathan, who I know is more of a Breath of the Wild fan and less of a Link's Awakening fan.
Link's Awakening is probably still one of the more bizarre games in the series. I haven't played it. I haven't played the original.
It's so weird.
Yeah, like the writing in it is maybe one of the best, like, because I don't think Zelda games are really known for their story or their writing, but Link's Awakening is kind of famously, like, I don't know whether it's a joke or a real thing, but is it not semi-inspired by Twin Peaks or something?
No, it is, and it's
cool.
it's sometimes absurdist and and sort of unreliable narrator in ways that are really interesting. And in the second half of the game, you sort of see the dark outline of the larger story. I don't know if the tone changes, but the writing in this game is good, especially for a Game Boy game, and they preserve almost everything from the Game Boy game. Like again, except for a few mechanical and visual changes, this feels like the same game. And this is a beloved game that was hampered only mechanically and visually. So it's great. If you love Link's Awakening and are willing to replay it, do that. If you love Zelda and haven't played Link's Awakening, this is now the version to do. I played through it, and it took me less than a week, I think, because again, like Link's Awakening is not a terribly long or elaborate game, but I absolutely loved it. It's an excellent remake.
Absolutely.
I got to play it still.
Maybe one day.
Speaking of remakes, Dragon Quest XI had a remake, I think, just a few weeks after Link's Awakening.
No, I think they were within a week.
Yeah,
they were within a week of each other.
Yeah,
I think,
they're
September.
maybe the same month even. So this is the Switch remake of Dragon Quest XI, which was a PS4 and 3DS game in Japan, but the rest of the world only got the PS4 version. The Switch version lets you play with the 16-bit style 3DS visuals or the beautiful 3D visuals of the PS4 version. And also give you a handful of extras and quality of life changes, not the least of which is a fully orchestrated soundtrack instead of the ugly MIDIs that were in the original PS4 version. The one black spot in an otherwise outstanding, amazing RPG, my game of the year from last year. But this port is excellent. It's called Definitive Edition, and I think it is the Definitive Edition. So if you haven't played it, then get to playing that version, because I adore Dragon Quest XI. I mean, I did a whole spoiler cast on it at the very first episode of Retro Encounter in 2019, and here I am still talking about it in the last episode of Retro Encounter in 2019.
It's on my list, but yeah, just because I played it so recently, as like a year ago, I put it off. But I will get it, definitely, because it is the definitive version. You've got that 2D version within there, and you've got the better soundtrack. You've got tons of new quests, and I think it being portable will help a ton as well, because Dragon Quest XI is 70 hours if you don't do everything, 100 hours if you do everything. So
guess which of those two ways I went about it.
Yeah. So
and I haven't played the Switch version either for that exact reason. I played this game for 105 hours in 2018. And I got a platinum trophy. I adored it, but I don't need to play that again less than a year later. I've held off on it for now. I will eventually want to replay that and get the Switch version. But for Dragon Quest fans more hardcore than I, or new players to this game, the Switch version is the way to go. It looks fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
So I would agree. I played it on Switch. It is the definitive version. Definitely captures that. The orchestrated soundtrack on its own is bright and excellent. It sounds great. It runs rather well on Switch. It does have dynamic resolution, so it can be a bit fuzzy.
Yeah, sometimes in 3D, if you're doing it handheld in the 3D version, the textures will get weird at certain draw distances. But that's just a normal limitation for Switch handheld mode sometimes.
Oh, sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it's still a good looking game, and it's still an impressive port. My issues with the game are more just on the level of the game. In terms of technical stuff, though, it like the orchestrated soundtrack didn't always gel perfectly into the game. Like there would just be times when it felt like this game needed more tracks. Because
oh no,
that's a problem.
That's an issue with the PS4 version as well.
Yeah, there were just moments when the soundtrack will be playing this really uplifting melody, and I'm like, this is completely at odds with the story. I don't understand why you're keeping this in.
I don't understand why they're keeping this in is also my exact feelings on the composer of Dragon Quest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, don't let someone, wipe away war crimes. Anyway, but I played about 40 hours of it, and then I dropped it, which was only one of two games that I dropped in 2019. Woo. It felt to me a bit like Sword and Shield in a way where I didn't feel a whole lot of personality from it. And this is completely subjective. I know a lot of people really love this game.
You're talking to one right now.
Exactly, yeah. I didn't really feel that it drew me in terribly well with it. And it's probably more so that I'm not really going to be a Dragon Quest fan. And to each their own, I think that's just what it's going to be. But I can say, even with that, and not being very high up on this game, I can say that if you do like Yuji Hoри's game design and you like Dragon Quest, this is a very good port, and it is really splendidly done in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Again, this is not a surprise to anyone. I think this is one of my favorite games of the past decade, and this is the best way to play that game. So that is about as much of a vote of confidence or as I can give. But again, this is a 2018 game, and this is supposed to be a 2019 podcast. So Alana, let's talk about a 2007 game.
Oh gosh, yeah. So let's talk about a brand new port. I think this is where we're going.
Yeah, I think we're doing a couple ports in a row right now, and
right.
and this is one that we also covered earlier in the year. Tales of Vesperia got a definitive edition port in January or February. Recording those podcasts with you and Steph, and then another one with Rob Fenner, just really had me feeling the Tales love in February of this year. Tales of Vesperia is one of the high points of the whole series, and the port was excellent. And and I'm not talking about wine. I'm talking about this very game. This game. It had a bunch of additions that were from the PS3 version of Vesperia, because Vesperia started out as a 360 game. It had an extended port on the PS3 a year or two later, and this is an HD remaster of that PS3 version, which means we get a very cute pirate girl, and we get to use more Flynn, and that's more than enough for me. Like Flynn and pirates, yes.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of the changes are towards the end of the game. Patty joined you a few times, but it's definitely the right version of the game to pick up and play. Like, it improves on the Xbox version tenfold. There are more spells, more arts, more everything. There's more story scenes. There's...
And like you said, the content of the new version is a little backloaded.
Yeah.
But if you avoid a lot of the extra content, it'll basically just be the same 360 game, but with two new characters joining late. But I mean, this is still one of the best RPGs of the 2000s, now updated for the 2010s.
For definite, yeah. I think, well, Vesperia was one of my favorites in the series, and I think
mine too. Mm-hmm.
It is the split game. Like, I think it is the last game that fans generally agree is one of the best, and then there's a lot of mixed opinions between Graces and Hearts, Graces, and then onwards to Berseria,
and Xillia. Xillia is a bit divisive too.
Xillia is the mixed bag for everybody.
I think Vesperia is interesting because it's the last one of the TP heavy battle system Tales games, and the Tales games that came after it, probably contributing to why there's mixed reactions to them, went to combat that didn't use a depleting resource system like MP or TP, and focused more on combos. And
Xillia has TP,
but you're not running out of TP all the time like you are in Vesperia or Abyss.
Yeah, the link system helps with that, definitely.
Yes.
But yeah, it's still TP heavy.
So in a way, this is like the last of the old Tales, first of the new Tales, but also one of the most enduringly popular ones in the whole series. And we got an awesome PS4/Switch/ maybe other systems I'm forgetting port of it.
Everything.
It was on everything? Awesome. So, yeah, if you have a video game playing refrigerator, get Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition for it.
Yeah.
And Nathan, Peter, and Joe, I don't know how... You've probably played fewer Tales games than Alana and I have. But please take our word for it that this is one of the better ones.
Yeah, I believe that. Like, everyone talks about Tales of Vesperia, and, like, pretty much whenever everyone brings up Tales, everyone talks about Vesperia. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I have the port. It's sitting on my desk. But maybe at some point I'll be able to get to it.
And I think I am rehashing points we made from the podcast months and months ago, but the main character of Tales of Vesperia won so many character fan polls they had to retire him from competition.
Yuri and Leon from Tales of Destiny, and eventually Ludger from Exilia 2, I think, as well.
Those are the three that were winning so many fan polls that they just had to retire them. And they're on the Mount Rushmore of Tales of protagonists, officially. But yeah, Vesperia, great character work, very good writing, satisfying action. A pretty early in his career. This is an early Troy Baker role, before even he was Kanji in Persona 4.
Yeah, it was before Kanji and before Snow in Final Fantasy 13 as well.
And also before he was Valvatorez in Disgaea 4. Like, this is when he was this was before he was one of the go-to leading men in anime and anime-styled video games. This is early Troy Baker.
It's one of the best dub. I think it's probably the best dub in the series.
It's an excellent dub start to finish, and it's a great RPG. And if you haven't already played it, the 2019 Definitive Edition is the way to play it. So let's talk about Shadowbringers. Shadowbringers is the third expansion to Final Fantasy XIV. Final Fantasy XIV famously started the decade in 2010, was so terrible that it was completely axed. They literally had a meteor fall on the world in-game, and you could see the world end while logged into the game if you wanted. Then the game was reborn as FF14 A Realm Reborn in 2013. And that was more successful, and that version of FF14 is still around. And then it had expansions in 2015, 2017, and then 2019 with Shadowbringers. And I don't want to speak for the entire FF14 community, but this is the best FF14 has ever been.
I think you are speaking for most of them.
For a lot of them. I got into FF14 a little bit late. I started playing it in 2016, then had a very brief, intense romance with it for about 6 months. Playing through almost all of the Realm Reborn content. But then when the Shadow Hearts... And then I didn't play the game for about 2.5 years. And when the Shadowbringers hype was starting to build up, a couple months before Shadowbringers came out, I started paying for it again. It is a subscription game. And picked up where I left off, and then beat the entire Heavensward and Stormblood expansions and played the beginning of Shadowbringers. Shadowbringers is level 70 to level 80 content, and my character's main class is at level 72. So that's I'm early in Shadowbringers, but holy hell. Both the quality of life changes made. All of the action and all of the classes, all of the jobs have been streamlined and play better than ever. And the balance is not perfect, but good. And there's more things for people to do than ever. If you don't want to do the main quest or trials or raids, there is an unthinkable number of side activities and side quests and whole gathering professions. And an entire casino, a lot of PvP. It's a theme park of things to do, but the main feature, that roller coaster at the center of the theme park, is the Shadowbringers storyline, which is awesome. I was dumbfounded the whole time, and I know a little bit about what happens in the game, but I'm going to avoid spoilers. This is a Caitlin Argyros question if there ever was one. But the main story of Shadowbringers, the level 70 to level 80 stuff, is as dramatic and as well written as any Final Fantasy game has been for the last 20 years. To get to a villain I like more than Emmett Selk, or side character, or core action that I like more than the Shadowbringers dungeons I've done, you have to go back to FF9. That is, and again, my Final Fantasy fandom is mostly rooted in the 90s, like FF4 through FF9. But this is, I think, the best Final Fantasy has been since its 90s heyday, in my opinion. So if you are not interested in 2010's Square Enix or not interested in playing an MMO, I understand. These are personal choices, but Shadowbringers is awesome. And it's also maybe the most fantasy-like Final Fantasy game in a long time, because the story of Shadowbringers, avoiding some spoilers, but not for the first few minutes of the game, some level 70 quests between Stormblood and Shadowbringers basically have several main characters transported to this new world. And you meet some characters from this new world in 2015 and 2016 quests. Alana, you might have played these. This is the Warriors of Darkness storyline.
Yes, I have played that much.
So they bring back some NPCs from 2015, 2016. You travel to their world, and their world was a world like yours, and in fact, it started out like thousands of years earlier. It was a parallel world with a lot of the same features, but in those intervening thousands of years, it evolved differently and changed differently. So you'll see landmarks and cities that you'll remember from the FF14 main game, but they're twisted and different, because this world has been under siege by monsters, by monsters of light, for centuries. And in the FF14 main game, you're fighting a lot of creatures of darkness, like Void Scent. But in this new world, you have to like use the power. Instead of you being a warrior of light fighting against darkness, you have to become a warrior of darkness, fighting forces of light. And it is so twisted and crazy, and the world feels like alien compared to the main stage of FF14. And the deeper I got in, the more fascinated I was. It's a bold choice. You're also fighting fascism and income and sort of inequality in a few of this areas in particular. They bring back a lot of story threads and a few specific characters from content in the 2013 to 2016 range. And the endgame raids are full of Final Fantasy nostalgia. The signature raid is based on the Eden summon from Final Fantasy VIII and has an awesome remake of the FF8 boss theme. And the Alliance raid has characters and music from Nier Automata, of all things. And the storyline for that raid is written by the popular Yoko Taro from the Nier series. So this is a fan service festival and an incredibly good RPG in its own right. I gave you only the barest of breadcrumbs of story at the beginning there, but everything I've played feels like the best Final Fantasy I've played in years. And I am on break from FF14 now because it was taking over my life a little bit. But I am going to start it again in 2020, and it will probably be one of the first 2020 video games I finish, I think, because I am chomping at the bit to return to this thing. I just need to get to a specific place in my life and and set aside some time to do so, because it's MMOs are time consuming, and Shadowbringers is no exception. But it's also, I think, maybe the best MMO expansion either of all time or at least since the peak of World of Warcraft around the Frozen Throne era.
Are both of y'all playing on PC with that?
I am playing on PC, but it doesn't matter how you play because all versions of the game have crossplay. Caitlin is a PS4 main, and I play on the Steam version, which is separate from the native PC version. But all of those versions can play in the same dungeons and do the same content together.
Oh, that's awesome! Yeah, because at some point I was going to pick it up for and play it on PS4 Pro. Yeah, but I need to. I need to get through some other Final Fantasy content before that, or I want to at least. I don't need to, but I will.
Yeah, and there's so much Final Fantasy content in FF14. Just to give you the tiniest of tastes, the Trial series in Heaven's Word are 3 important bosses from Final Fantasy VI. The signature raid in Stormblood is one of the super bosses from Final Fantasy V. The recently announced Trial series for level 80 for Shadowbringers are a couple bosses in Final Fantasy VII.
One of the raids from Stormblood, there's too many SBs, is also Ivalice, which is Final Fantasy Tactics and Final Fantasy XII.
Correct,
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's the Alliance raid at level 70.
And very tangentially, Vagrant story.
Yes, it is.
Yes, we go into the Vagrant story position within the Ivalice timeline a little bit in some November podcasts, if you remember that, Joe.
Yeah, I think I might.
But Final Fantasy XIV is an outstanding MMO with a really deep and lengthy story that celebrates Final Fantasy and tells its own story. And Shadowbringers is the best version of this. The fan base was recently revealed to have hit 18 million, the highest it's ever been. So you will definitely be able to find people to run dungeons with you.
That is almost the population of the state of New York.
Wow, yeah.
Like I was trying to knock out some 2013 content. This is over the summer that barely anyone would ever need to, because no one needs these items anymore. Maybe, but I was able to find groups for that, because there's people that just want to be playing all of FF14 right now, and because the in-game population is very high, now is the best time to be playing it. Shadowbringers is awesome, and I think that's all she wrote. Otherwise, I don't want this to turn into a Shadowbringers podcast, like we had a couple random encounters in a row in the summer being. But we're almost done here. I don't want this podcast to be over long. Is there anything else we absolutely must cover before we close? Because I mean, there's a lot of games on this list.
I'll give a shout out to Cadence of Hyrule for being the strangest combination ever.
Yeah.
A Zelda spin-off not made by Nintendo that's
And
rhythm-based.
Yeah. Well, now's the time for shout-outs. Let's shout out Judgment, which is made by the Yakuza team, but has the main character of the popular Japanese drama Hero from the early 2000s, and and you're a martial arts detective solving a mystery. Nathan or Joe, do you have any shout-outs?
Shout out to Neocab. Which I think I haven't played it myself, but I've listened to interviews and read interviews with one of the creators of it, Patrick Ewing, not the basketball player.
Man!
Apparently he gets it a lot.
I bet he does.
But it seems to be a really fascinating look at the gig economy and how difficult it is to get by, and much less to thrive within the confines of the gig economy.
So that's a little bit like Cart Life, or maybe even Papers, Please.
Yeah, it's I definitely see quite a bit of similarity to Papers, Please. I think it's a little. Papers, Please is a very upsetting game.
So is Cart Life. Basically the moral of the story in Cart Life is no matter how much you work, you have to sacrifice something in order to survive in this economy.
Yeah, and it seems Neocab kind of takes a similar route to this, and I think it's a game that I definitely want to get around to, because I think games are uniquely positioned to be able to tell these kinds of stories and to immerse people in them. So.
Nathan, what do you want to shout out?
Give a shout out to Atelier Ryza for, I believe, kind of, I'm not sure if I should say reviving the series, but kind of renewing interest, because I noticed that, like, online, a bunch of new people are picking up Atelier Ryza.
Yeah, I mean,
trying it out for the first time.
This series did not need reviving, because it feels like a new Atelier game comes out every year, even though that's not exactly the case. But this one had a lot of positive buzz around it, and people like our mutual friend Derek Heemsbergen, who has played all or nearly all of those, was much more positive on this one than a few of its predecessors. So yeah, good on Atelier Ryza for being a good one of those. Did Alana or Joe, did you play that one?
Didn't know. Atelier Ryza is actually the third Atelier game to come out this year. So if you say annual, it's 3 this year.
Oh, yikes.
The tri-annual Atelier series.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, this is not even including the Trilogy port that's coming out, I think. Like the Dusk Trilogy on
January.
Switch. Yeah, it's coming soon.
This smells like a few Japanese releases from different years getting localized in the same year. But still, that's not reducing that's not, spoiling the joke. That would be like a near annual series getting 3 in 1 year.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like Yakuza at this point. I mean, you get so many from
shout out Yakuza Remastered Collection, which are HD ports of Yakuza 3, 4, and 5. Leading into 2020, that's one of the things that I want to do is I want to get into the Yakuza series and play a good chunk of them. So you and I share that goal, Joe, because I own copies of Yakuza 1 Kiwami and Yakuza 0. And I have not played any Yakuza games except for quite a bit of the Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise game from the Yakuza team.
Oh.
which does not count, I think. So I also want to try and get into Yakuza in 2020. And you know, I think that might be a good idea to end the podcast. What's one RPG or video game goal that you have for 2020 that each of the four of us can think of something that's, you know, can be a 2020 game or can be part of your backlog? Just tell us one of your 2020 video game goals. I'll go first, and I already said Yakuza, so I'll switch to something else. I enjoy Zelda. I have played many Zelda games, but one I have barely ever scratched is Majora's Mask. And I have had copies of... I have more than one copy of Majora's Mask to my name. I own it on a GameCube disc and on 3DS. And I think I want to finally sit down and play Majora's Mask for the first time. That's going to be one of my 2020 goals. Does anyone else want to volunteer for this? I feel like an annoying uncle at Thanksgiving dinner asking people to share their New Year's resolutions. But that's who I am right now. So who has a 2020 gaming goal to share?
So I guess I'll go next. So one, I was actually thinking about this last night, so it's funny that you asked today. So one of my 2020 goals is to play through the Trail series, at least through Cold Steel.
Yeah.
Because I have Cold Steel 1 and 2 just sitting on my desk.
Oh, that counts.
And I'm just looking at them. It's like I just really just want to just like play them at some point once I have the time. So last night I think I just like put Cold Steel 1 into my PS4 just to make sure that whenever I log into my PS4 now, and that icon is right there.
And just making sure to download the updates ahead of time so you don't sit there on January 1st and have to wait an extra 20 minutes.
Yeah, so just making sure. So now whenever I log into PS4, that icon's going to be there, and I have to like look at it when I go into my PS4. So
maybe I should put my copy of Majora's Mask next to my alarm clock or something to employ a similar strategy.
It worked. I mean, it's been saying it for quite a while, but every single time I looked at it, I was just like, I really should just like put it in my PS4 at least and just, you know, get it on there to get my mind set for it.
All right. Does anyone else have a video game resolution to share?
I had already mentioned stuff about Yakuza, but I want to get through the rest of the mainline Final Fantasy series this year because, as I've probably mentioned ad nauseum, I hadn't actually played a Final Fantasy game until this year, and once again, I still will always wonder how the heck I got on this site. Which is wonderful. But speaking of that, like, I think during my interview, I was literally playing Chrono Trigger, and it was... Anyway.
And you've knocked out several already, because I know you and I have had conversations about Final Fantasy Tactics and Final Fantasy VI, at least.
Yeah. I played 6, 7, 8, 9, and Tactics this year.
Those all count?
So next year, I want to do 10, 12, maybe 13... 10, 2, and 15. So
now I have a problem immediately, Joe, because you did not say 4, 5, or 14 in that list at all.
Well, 14 is that's quotidian. Like, that's going to have to be something that's going to be a real long haul. And
excellent use of quotidian, and 2020 is going to be the most quotidian video game year in a long time because we're getting more Animal Crossing in 2020,
gosh, yeah.
which is the most quotidian of quotidian series. I just like saying quotidian.
It's such a good word. But 4 and 5. I wanted to start with 6 because I can appreciate like SNES era games and such, but I don't really have that nostalgia for it, and it's not always my cup of tea. Don't kill me, Mike. So I will get around to them at some point. I'm sorry.
All right. Even if you ignore the 16-bit or older Final Fantasy games, playing more of that series when you have only started playing so in 2019 is a noble goal, and I appreciate your sharing that, Joe. If we ever did a third Gaming Confessions episode, I think we could probably just have Joe talk for an hour and a half while I seethe at him.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, you just put me. You just set me down and you're like, okay, you're just going to talk for an hour about all your gaming sins, and I'm just going to be sitting by the microphone being like, and I never played a Trails game, and I never played past Final Fantasy IX. Like,
when we recorded the second one of those, I just struggled to think of a series I hadn't played, and I think Joe would have the opposite problem.
oh yeah,
But that's enough clowning on you, Joe. Which you have done so gracefully, and I appreciate it. Alana,
Yeah.
what's one 2020 gaming goal that you have?
Well, I've referred to both, so Kiseki, the wider, so Sky and Crossbell probably, somehow, definitely Sky, because I think Cold Steel 4 will probably hit the end of next year or early 2021. That's being positive because there was maybe 10 or 11 months between Cold Steel 1 and 2 in the West, so I'm hoping it's going to be a similar situation.
I think this isn't. I guess this is me piggybacking on you a little bit. I also want to play Trails of Cold Steel 2 in 2020 very, very much. That's on the list right after Majora's Mask and, quote, podcast obligations, end quote.
I said Zero Escape. I will play the Zero Escape series next year, 100%.
Word.
I have all of them on Steam, so that's a good start. But in terms of backlog, I think this next year will be the year I actually beat Valkyrie Profile. I was so upset I could not be on the podcast in 2018, 2017, whenever we did it. Life stuff came up.
I think it was early 2018.
Yeah, life stuff came up, and I was a bit gutted because I was really enjoying what I was playing, and I've played so many different successors that I really want to play the original because there are so many fans of it on the site, and I know a mutual on Twitter adores the game, so I really, really, really want to make my way through it, finally.
If you talk to Steph Sabillo about Valkyrie Profile for 5 minutes, you will probably get her motor-mouthing all about it and probably sketching one of the main characters in the middle of that conversation.
Definitely.
So yeah, these are noble goals all around. Thank you for indulging me in that slightly embarrassing exercise, everyone. But I think if we're talking about some 1998 to 2000 games in a podcast ostensibly about 2019, we have reached the end of the episode.
Very unusual for being the wrong thing to talk about in a Retro Encounter episode.
Yeah, we only do talk about current year games once or twice a year in Retro Encounter, and so we're just filling out that quota a little bit. But I don't mind betraying the retro word in our title occasionally, even though I know some of our listeners will say, Dragon Quest XI, that's not retro, in the Facebook comments. Shout out to all the haters. So yeah, this has been an episode of a lot of reflection and shout-outs and goals, but it's time to talk about the future. Next week we are doing an episode all about the PlayStation. PlayStation 1 had its 25th anniversary, I think, in December, just a few weeks ago. And so we're going to be celebrating the PlayStation 1 a few weeks late by talking about the top 10 PlayStation RPGs. Alana, you and I have already had a planning meeting about this episode, so I think the list is set, but we still have to record the discussion, and I'm looking forward very much to that recording. It's going to be a lot of fun. And also, after that episode, we are doing a spoiler cast on a game that we talked about earlier this episode. You probably have a reasonable guess as what that is, since I am going to be hosting that episode. And it was one of my favorite games of 2019. But because it's recent, we're going to put the word spoiler cast after the episode title. And so that'll be the second week of January. And then the rest of January, we have 2 episodes on Suikoden 5. That game won a listener poll surrounding episode 200, and we are finally going to talk about that game on the podcast for 2 episodes next month. And listeners, if you want to reach out to the podcast, the best way to do so is to email retro@rpgfan.com. rpgfan.com also has dedicated forums, a Facebook page, an Instagram page, a Twitter account, a Discord server, and a Twitch channel with something streaming every day, and a YouTube channel that is having new content added every week. Please check out any of those places you are interested in, and you can find links to all of them from rpgfan.com. And Retro Encounter is only one of 4 fine podcasts on RPG Fan. We also have Random Encounter, focused on current events and randomness, Rhythm Encounter, focusing on RPG music, but hasn't had an episode in a long time, sadly, and Phoenix Edge, which is a weekly podcast mostly focused on current events that is hosted on live on YouTube every week. So please review Retro Encounter and those 3 other Retro Encounter siblings on iTunes, Google Play, or whomever wherever you're listening to us. Shout out Shakira. We love feedback. So before we close out, Shakira is a gem, okay?
I'm not arguing with you. I am not arguing with you at all. This is a laugh agreeing with you. So
okay,
I would never criticize.
In non-Shakira content, let's share with the listeners how they can reach each of the four of us directly. First, one final shout-out of the episode. Peter Triezenberg had to leave partway through the episode for some family obligations. You can find him at I Have Fury on Twitter. Peter is a delight, and he is on too few Retro Encounter episodes, saying that right now, even though I think he has like the fourth most Retro Encounter appearances of anyone. But now that Peter's out of the way, Joe, how can listeners reach you?
You can reach me on RPG fan social media accounts. I'm usually running those. My personal ones, you can reach me on Twitter, Discord, and Instagram as @QueersForFears. So you can message me there, talk to me about how Shakira's Sale El Sol is one of the defining albums of the 2010s.
Shakira. Nathan, how can listeners reach you?
Alright, so you can find me on Twitter. I am at SmashKing27. Or on Discord, I am SmashKing.
And Nathan, come on, you're holding out on us. I know you've been doing a fair amount of video game streaming lately. Do you have a separate account that you stream from?
Alright, so on Twitch, you can find me. I am SmashKing TV on Twitch.
There we go.
There we go. I'm on a bit of a hiatus right now, just a bit of personal reasons, but I'm hoping to come back in 2020.
Word. And from your Twitter account, people could find out what games and times you're streaming from.
Yes.
Excellent. Now, Alana, how can listeners reach you?
So the best place is Twitter. I am at Alana Hagues on there. Otherwise, I'm sometimes occasionally pop in on our Discord. I'm Diving Falcons there. But I'm always happy to talk about video games. I usually tweet about stuff that I'm playing that's not site relevant or I'm not covering for the site. So please indulge me in my screaming as Ulysses and Macias sit next to each other. Thank you.
And one of these days, Alana, we will make that Rayman Encounter podcast.
Just
so we get all the Rayman Encounter out there that RPG fan won't let us talk about.
Do you know, the minute Rayman gets announced as a PS5 game, I am buying a PS5. That's going to be the deal breaker, I think.
Rayman Origins and Rayman Legends are two of the best platformers of the past 20 years. Full stop. And
Snaps.
Yeah, and they don't have a follow up. Where's pick the noun following Rayman? I don't care. Just throw it out there and I'm in.
I'm still waiting.
Me too. But listeners, if you want to reach me, there's a couple ways to do so. I'm on Twitter at @TheRealMonsoon most of the time, at Evoker4Dogs at other times. That's a Persona 3 reference, Joe. And
I played Persona 3. Okay.
And on Discord at Monsoon Mike most of the time. And I'm on many, many episodes of this podcast, Retro Encounter, which is now closing out 2019 and looking ahead to 2020. Thank you, good night, and good luck to Lamar Jackson and Shakira and no one else. Go Ravens.